Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doom Patrol as well as the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Doom Patrol, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Doom Patrol. A great episode. Holy shit. So many things to kind of break down. I love that we kind of find out what is basically Mr. Nobody's reasoning for doing all this. Basically, he got dumped by a woman named Millie because she was just kind of like you're a nothing, you're nobody. Hence, I guess that's why his name comes from, because it's like, oh, you have all these big ideas, but you'll never be somebody. Because he tried to go out and be a part of the Brotherhood of Evil, but they fired him. And that's why I'm kind of like, and even she brings it up. It's like, how did he go about firing someone? It's like, yeah, how does an evil organization go about firing someone? Well, basically the brain said like, oh yeah, he just doesn't have the zip, kind of what's there necessarily. I'm like, that's so interesting. And I love the little nod of like, oh yeah, I got replaced by a gorilla. She's like, oh, they're bringing in muscle. He's like, no, it's a literal gorilla. Apparently he's very smart. Apparently he can speak French too or something like that. I'm like, Gorilla God, which is so interesting because I guess in my head I wouldn't have thought that Brotherhood of Evil would be as old as it is, but I mean, it's kind of been referenced before being old, but still it's just in my head. I guess because like, once again, I attribute the Brotherhood of Evil to like Teen Titans, the original cartoon. I've talked about that before, but that's like my only main instance of the Brotherhood of Evil, you know, especially because that was like the final arc of the Teen Titans cartoon, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So it was just something kind of interesting, I thought. But lo and behold, that basically put him on this path. And so we have, you know, everyone, you know, is like, oh, we're going to go rescue Niles and everything, you know, with our current day Doom Patrol. I love it. And then they go into Danny. I love it, being like, oh yeah, this is Danny. He's like, and Larry's like, oh, didn't I tell you guys about Danny? It's like, Rita's like, well, you know, Vic mentioned a little bit about it. And Jane's like, dude, you need to stop holding like so much stuff in. It's like, in the sense of like, Larry out of anyone has the most secret. But I do love that they go to Danny. And, you know, Danny's excited to see Larry. Danny's excited to see Flex and everything. But now it's a situation of like, oh yeah, apparently Ernest is there because somehow he found his way to Danny. Like that whole situation the last time we saw him, I'm guessing that was Mr. Nobody. And it's like, oh, you came after me, and kind of scared him away. And then he was like, oh, but I guess being scared away, like Danny at some point found him and tracked him down. And it's like, oh, helped kick his, you know, beard hair addiction. And it's just like, oh, so he's like, oh, I'm just a normal person now. And loving that Hammerhead's like, oh, I'm gonna shove these bananas up your ass, steal with the pills on and everything. But Danny's known where Mr. Nobody has been the entire time, just hasn't said anything because Danny's too scared. He was afraid of Mr. Nobody, which is understandable. And it's like, okay, where is he? The white space is basically a space that exists in between the panels of the comic book of like, yeah, it's where there is no content, where there is no story. And I love that, you know, it's like the whole conversation of, well, we can't just go in there because, you know, last time we went up against Mr. Nobody, he just split us up. Jane's like, well, we won't let that happen. Well, what about the deconstructor? It's like, well, we made the reconstructor. What about all those senior citizens? We kind of messed things up for them. And it's like, they were already fucked up before you even got there. And Cliff is like, yes, I get it. Our win-loss thing is super terrible. It's shit. But the fact of the matter is we've been through so much. We're here. Let's do this. And we're going to do this together. And Flex flexes a certain muscle, and then everyone's like, I'm starting to feel something. Cliff's like, am I supposed to be feeling something? He's like, I'm not feeling. It took me a while. I'm like, what's going on here? And then they're like, we're all reaching. I'm like, oh my God. And then like Jane's like, we're fucking coming, man. I'm like, oh my God. And everyone inside of Danny, including Danny itself, is having an orgasm. And Cliff being like, oh, and it's just like, oh my God, this is happening, this fucking show. I love it, dude. It's so crazy. And then when it was all said and done, it's like, just give us a minute. He's like, right. Flex is like, I'm sorry. Because she's like, I'm going to fucking, James like, I'm going to fucking kill you. It's like, oh my God. I even love it that guy that was right beside the beard hunter pulls out a cigarette, and the beard hunter's about to light it for him. I'm like, everyone felt it. Even Danny was like, oh my God. And then that little inflatable man ends up like kind of deflating. It's like, this is amazing. What other superhero show can you get shit like this? This is amazing. And then Jane asks, like, wait, why were you screaming? He's like, what? And she's like, wait, were you faking an orgasm? He's like, what? No, I have too much respect for everyone around here he's like, well, I just didn't want to be left out. And Rita's like, oh, and he's like, don't pity me. I love that. And it's like, okay, so they end up getting sucked into the pages. I guess Flex opening a portal there doesn't suck him in. Like, I wonder whether, like, because I'm sure his portal is probably only one way. Like, he can open it, but he has to keep the Flex up to open the portal, so probably can't actually utilize it himself. Hence why only our 4 heroes are in there. And I do appreciate, Mr. Nobody doing the whole thing of, like, everyone saying, holy shit, and he gets to Cliff. Holy, yes, shit, we got it, Cliff, already. And I love the whole thing of, like obviously trying to give them their opportunities, like, oh, here are these lives that you could have led. Like, me being as powerful as I am, I can give you the lives that you wanted without all the tragedies and stuff like that. But obviously none of them end up taking it because they have grown. I love it. It's like, we've grown since the whole donkey situation. He's like, grown? You're all like a C-Team Breakfast Club. And the fact is that, but I liked a lot of stuff that they ended up saying, because Cliff, it's like he already kind of ruined things for one family. He's kind of got a new family now. He's not going to screw up this new life. Larry thinks it's like, my wife and children, like, the fact is our lives were already a little messed up way before the day of the accident. The fact is that they're kind of better off without me. It's like, well, you could be with John again, and it's like, John lived his life, and it's about time I lived mine too. Rita, confronts the fact is that she was like, even before what happened to her, she was like, I was a monster, but because of Niles, because of everything, because of this team, I've become a better person. And Jane's kind of at war with us. I'm curious, was that specifically Jane, the one that was like, no, we can't leave, it's safer here because there's other people that'll get hurt because of us? But it's like, no, like, because Hammerhead's like, this is the day that all of us got free. This is the best day of our lives because their barks got a little more bite to them, I thought that was kind of interesting. And it's like, Hammerhead's like, I don't give a fuck about, like, oh, normal people, who care, regular people, who cares about that, who cares about them? Our only job is to protect one girl, Kay. So they broke free, and obviously you have Mr. Nobody kind of narrating everything, but then Rita kind of steps up and is like, no, I'm the one that's narrating this. And it's like, yo! And then lo and behold, it's like, all right, we're getting ready for the climactic battle. It's like, oh yeah, let me suit up and get ready. He turns into his, his typical Mr. Nobody form, and it's like, oh yeah, we're about to get down to this climax. And lo and behold, Dr. Harrison pops up. It's like, really? That's the form you decided to take when we're about to hit like this huge climactic battle? And it's like, she ends up psychoanalyzing him and breaking down like the reason why he's doing all of this. And it's like, the fact is that Rita was able to take control from you is because it had to be a woman. Then the whole Millie thing gets revealed, and it's like, really? That's your motivation for all of this? And then Cliff is like, honestly, I understand, I can get behind that. It makes sense. And everyone kind of like, no, we don't want to fight you. The thing is, it's sad because, like, almost feel bad for you. It's like, come on, dude, let's kind of work together. Let Niles into your heart and stuff like that. He's like, what? No. And it's just like, oh my god, this is how he's getting beaten down. And they're like, honestly, dude, we don't feel like fighting. It's almost like too sad to fight you, like your situation. I was like, are we going to shift Mr. Nobody over into a hero type of situation right now of like, oh yeah, he's going to be here, and they're going to have like little group therapy sessions and stuff like that going forward? It's like, is that how this whole situation is going to play out? Because I love the whole thing that plays out with Cyborg, because obviously Cyborg has his issues with everything about himself. But lo and behold, we learn from Silas that everything about his mistrust of his dad isn't 100% out of place, because his dad's like, yeah, I did lie to you, that your memories aren't 100% what you thought they were. It's not that, your systems were corrupted or messed with. I literally messed with your original memory, because while he was during his multiple surgeries, he's kept telling the story over and over again about how his mom died during an explosion when she didn't. He basically had a choice to he could only save one of them. Obviously, he was leaning more towards his wife, but like Niles made him realize, like, obviously Vic is a better candidate for the biotech, but also like your wife would want it this way. She wouldn't let you make any other choice. But for Vic, it's like, you've made me carry this weight that what happened to mom's death was 100% on me, but it's like, you had a part to play in it too. And he's like, yes, that's true. He didn't realize how destructive that is. A one simple lie, but that lie was told over and over and over again until the point is that Vic even, and that's the thing about, when you tell something over and over again, you start getting only your perspective, and you kind of lose perspective on the truth. And that's what happened to Vic, because he had heard the story over and over again about what happened, that, it was over the course of these years, plus it was during such a traumatic thing that obviously his brain started compensating, being like, oh, this must be the truth. He started kind of accepting it. And for, his dad is like, I just didn't want to destroy our family, because all we have left is each other, and I didn't want to, I didn't want you to hate me, because obviously it's like all of this kind of that memory and all of that kind of helped forge him into Cyborg, and it's still kind of the thing of like, I've hated myself. Like, it's caused Vic so many issues. It's been one of his outstanding issues, that thought of like that guilt, feeling responsible for everything falling apart, you know? Especially because, you know, there's even more guilt because it's like, you decided to save me over mom too. So it's like, I'm here now because you saved me instead of mom. So that adds even more guilt probably to his situation. So he's deciding to go help his friends. I do love that when he shows up to, you know, kill Mr. Nobody, it's like, boom, shoots him in the back and goes, booyah. I'm like, that's our first official booyah of the show. And so I love it. It's like, oh, it's all settled. Let's go home. It's like, yeah, we're doom patrolling it up. Oh, Rita, do you use your powers to, you know, stick your nose that far up Niles' ass? And it's like, boom. It's like, oh, you know, Cliff making joke of, do you think I wake up looking this pretty and stuff like that? There's just so much to it. It's like, hey, and there's the robot. I was like, the moment the robot popped up, I was like, they're still stuck in Mr. Nobody, because that was a robot. He had made the choice. It's like, oh, I'm gonna show this off to the Brotherhood of Evil. Like, that was one of his ideas. I was like, they're still inside Mr. Nobody, and it like repeats, puts them in this loop. It's meant specifically for Niles to torture him, because it's so interesting, because Niles was kind of like, no matter what happens, you're never gonna break me about the hairy woman, or like that secret that he's been keeping this entire time. It's like that, plus everything that happens with he had talked about that before. It's like, you can do whatever you want to them, but I'm not going to break. But he ultimately does break when he figures the whole situation out. I even love it that Vic shows up being like, yo, what the hell is going on? And it's like, wait, what? The Vic that had shot him was Mr. Nobody, which in turn kind of makes sense too, because like, you know, it's like, because Vic had made a whole conversation before about like, that's not really my catchphrase. How many times have I said it? And Grid was like, oh, you've said it like 36 or 37 times. I'm like, okay, so that's interesting. So for him to kind of use this moment to finally say it, I was like, oh, but now it's like, oh, Vic didn't even actually say it, because that was just Mr. Nobody in disguise. And it's like, yeah, so lo and behold, you actually can't beat me. You never could. You never will. And the fact of the matter, Vic's like, I'm trying to understand what's going on. He's like, you understand once they clip this part as like the beginning of like the previously on Doom Patrol, you know, within the next episode and stuff like that. I even love earlier, he was like, the fact of the matter is, I'm so powerful, I can control this entire streaming service. I'm like, I love the fourth wall breaking. It's so good. I love it. But lo and behold, it's like, yep. So the only thing that's going to set you guys free is the truth. And Niles reluctantly has to tell them the truth. And apparently that truth is everything that's happened to them, the tragedies that basically put them where they are right now, gave them their powers and everything. Apparently it wasn't just an accident. He made it all happen. It's like, whoa, wait, what? So now that puts into question everything. I'm thinking, my thought process is, it's actually kind of fucked up, because it's like, you made them the way they are just so that you could be there to be their saviors. I think this has to deal with that woman that he fell in love with, that he's keeping protected. He needed a new squad of heroes. The last squad of heroes he had on his side, we saw what they looked like going up against Mr. Nobody. He knew eventually Mr. Nobody would come after, because obviously there's still history between Mr. Nobody and Niles that we still haven't really 100% tackled yet. We've done a little bit here and there, but full on what it is that like Niles is trying to escape from him, like why that woman is so important to Mr. Nobody. I wonder what his connection is to like the Brotherhood of Evil, like Mr. Nobody, like where does he stand with him being like the powerful person that he is? Like, has he been kicking it as Mr. Nobody this entire time? Did he fling himself into the future so that he could go to a specific point in time? Like, what has he been doing for the past, like, what? 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 2000, 2019, 70-ish years. Like, what has he been doing in all that time? I'm curious, you know? But that does, like, he must have been Niles must have been needing a squad to protect him. So, you know, he knew Mr. Nobody would potentially show up, so he needed a squad that could be his defense, his wall. So, well, heroes don't just come about every day like that, so he made his own. I'm assuming that's potentially where that's going, but everyone's looking like, wait, what? Because it's like, oh, no matter what happened, there's no secrets between us, so you can tell us whatever, everything's going to be good. It's like, all the progress they made is probably going to ultimately be undone, because, like, they're doing everything to save Niles, and it's like, wait, what the fuck? You made us like this? You trashed our lives the way you did? I think, and this is interesting, too, we might be going down that route of, like, oh, this is some, like, Rip Hunter stuff, like, once again, and that's always been something I've always pulled from, like, DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Why he chose the specific legends, the original legends he chose, because they had the least amount of impact on the timeline. They weren't anything special. So I'm wondering, is that the same thing in this case? Is it just the fact is that they were nobodies that he was like, oh, I can take advantage of, but now he actually kind of grew to care about them, so now he regrets what he did? Or, I mean, it seems like he regrets it since you see the look on their faces, like looking at him, and the look of him being like, oh, I super fucked up. So I'm very interested to kind of see where all that ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Next episode being the season finale, so I'm interested to see how this all plays out. It's going to be wild, I'm sure. And now moving on to this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A lot of interesting things to kind of break down about this episode. So obviously we have everything with Sarge and his team, and it does seem like there is a little dissension amongst the ranks, in particular Pax. Seems like he isn't 100% okay with the way that the Sarge has been kind of operating. He just kind of wants to take a breather on this planet. It's like, oh, the fresh air, is good before things kind of really go to shit here. Why don't we kind of take a breather here? The fact is we lost a comrade and everything. But for him, it's kind of like that's what friends are for. So for him, it's kind of like it's all a means to an end. Even to the point later on he's telling Jocko, it's like, yo, if we need be, we might need to keep an eye on Pax. If need be, we can just wipe him out. Get rid of him and kind of find a new replacement, which is kind of interesting. Does that mean, are you going to try and take someone from this world? Because isn't it only you four? Because there's a whole conversation of like wherever they're from, like Jocko in particular, he hasn't smelled his world's air in years. So, and what about Snow? Her whole situation of like, oh yeah, like she killing people, turning them into butterflies and stuff like that. Like basically they're going to get reincarnated as butterflies. What is that all about? I don't know. It's kind of interesting too because it almost seems like Sarge isn't all about killing, yet it seems like him and his group seem like they're world destroyers. So that's why it's kind of like, okay, so if you're reluctant to like, oh, killing people. For him, it's like, oh yeah, the bank, well, not the bank, the jewelry store. It's like, oh, I didn't expect things to kind of be that bloody. It was kind of, I just wanted you to knock them out and you didn't have to kind of kill the guards or whatever. But so it is, and he's even making excuses like, oh, don't kill Dana. We could potentially keep her alive. It'd be worth it and stuff. And that's all like, huh. So, I mean, maybe it's just a means to an end because he's the one that kind of comes up with the plans. He gives out the orders. So, how he feels about things, it changes. So maybe at some points he's like, oh yeah, it's okay to straight up kill. Other cases, it's not. I don't know. I'm curious, is he not just kind of like the cold-blooded killer that I would kind of assumed him to potentially be if he is a world destroyer and everything? But we'll kind of get to that a little bit later on. Obviously, there's the whole thing of May dealing with the fact is, hey, there's someone running around looking like Coulson. She tells Mac that. Mac's like, let's not really jump on that until we know 100% for sure. And it led to an interesting conversation with Benson because Benson's like, yo, why did you guys tell me about the fact is how we know that this isn't Coulson come back to life? He came back to life before, and Yo-Yo had to be like, yeah, that was kind of an argument all in his own. It's like, yeah, that's a whole thing that this particular group had nothing to do with. The fact of the matter is, it's actually something Coulson didn't even have anything to do with. Obviously, that was kind of done without his, say so and whatnot. So, but it's obviously a sore spot for May because he's like, oh, how are we so certain that this is, not really Coulson? She's like, I was there when he died. The fact is, don't even question that because obviously it's just making her have to relive the fact is of seeing the man that she loves die. Like it's just, it's almost disrespectful in her mind, and obviously after Benson's own loss, I think he can, when Matt kind of explains everything between Coulson and May, because it's like, yeah, like, everyone, you better than anyone what it's like to have memories that you'd rather kind of you'd rather forget. And, those particular memories for May are going around killing people. So that's a complicated situation in that regard. It does appear from the DNA that it is the same DNA as Coulson's. It's just got high levels of like radiation in it or whatever. So, okay. So also they're apparently after diamonds and stuff. I mean, they're not after diamonds. Diamonds are worthless to them. It is interesting to hear kind of they're talking about like, oh yeah, like this world, they use combustion for their weapons. Even the fact is they put faces on their money. They're like, oh great, another world that does that. But hey, it's better than coins and stuff like that. So that's interesting. I guess because the PEGs that they're looking for are these crystals, and I guess they're going to be used to charge the weapon or whatever that they're using. What's interesting too is like obviously that the device they use to kind of open portals. I like how it's utilized in this episode because obviously it's stuck to the particular surface that the device is locked into. So like obviously later on when May's fighting, she knocks like the cabinet or whatever that it's locked onto down, and Snow gets like stuck on the other side because the portal's technically closed off on her end because it's blocked off because of that. And it's like, it kind of reminds me of Portal. the video game. So it kind of reminds me of that, and I like a lot of kind of the physics stuff they're using when they utilize it. Like May kind of falls backwards into it, but obviously the way the other portal is set up, she's kind of flinging out very, like, obviously you keep your momentum, and I think that's so trippy, and I like just how that's utilized in this episode, how that whole thing works. Really heavily makes you think of Portal. Like, I think that's the best, like, comparison to kind of make in that regard. But nevertheless, it was pretty sick. May kind of laying down the beat down, like, kind of showing you once again that May being like the one woman army that she is, basically taking everyone down. It's like, yeah, you guys aren't really anything. But for May, the moment she saw Coulson, which I love, like, Dana got rescued, and she's like, "Can't someone help me?" And Coulson's sending her like, "Really?" I love when moments where, like, the bad guy kind of has moments where you're like, What? Come on, guy. I asked you to do one simple thing. The lady's running away. Like, obviously that, it's just funny to me that really just spoke volumes. I was like, I like that. But it seems like on both occasions, for May and for Coulson, when they saw each other, well, when she was like, Coulson, because it's like, knowing that he looks like Coulson is one thing, but probably when she looked into his eyes, she really saw Coulson, so, she was caught off guard. But for him, it's like, Jocko's like, why'd you freeze when you heard the word Coulson? Because it seems like for him, it's like, because Pax had made up that whole point of like, oh, one day we'll hear about that past of yours or something like that. So either he doesn't remember his past, which is one of those thoughts I had of like, okay, so what if because there's a lot I need to break down about this. One thought I brought this up before was like, okay, so what if we kind of have spoilers, a Captain Marvel situation going on here where he was taken from, like, he didn't really die, or at least someone resurrected him or something, and then they just wiped his memories, kind of like her in the Creed. So that's one thought I had. Then another thing was obviously the whole, they're from a different dimension, kind of a multiverse type of situation. I'm leaning with that direction now. That's kind of where I leaned more into before, but I'm kind of leaning into it more now. I think he is Coulson from a different world. He just doesn't remember who he is, because he is genetically the same as Coulson. It's like 100%. But I'm thinking he's from a different dimension, and obviously Coulson's life worked out differently, but he doesn't remember who he is. So when she says Coulson, yes, it registers, but he's not the Coulson they know. He's a Coulson from a different dimension, had a different life potentially. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe he's just from like a different Earth. Obviously, like this potentially being like the 616 continuity, like maybe this is a different, you get what I'm trying to say? That's where my mindset is right now. Not unless this is setting it up to be like no, he is the real Coulson, just something else happened. I don't know. I'm leaning more towards the alternate world that he just happens to have the same, he just doesn't remember who he is, but he isn't the same Coulson. That's where my mind is on that. But we'll ultimately see. Obviously, May's taking this hard because it's like, for her, it's like the man she loves, there's someone around killing people, To be fair, he's not doing most of the killing. Well, to be fair, he killed Fox, so there's that, but that which sucks for Keller, because Keller is the one that kind of brought Fox into this whole situation. But it's definitely hard for May, because it's like once again that whole thing of like battling a person, like even if he's not the man you love. But the thing is, I think she saw something. She looked in his eyes, and they might look the same, might have the same DNA, but I think it's that thing of like the eyes can't lie. And when she looked into his eyes, it's like, Coulson, like, I think she saw the man she loves. So we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening beyond that. But there's also obviously the video that Benson finds of them destroying a planet. Now, I went into the season like, they're world destroyers. Now, another part of me wonders is, do you think on some level that they're not actually world destroyers? Because it's like, it's so interesting, because it's like, why is there so little of you? And that's also the conversation that came up before of like, the fact is that there's so little of you. How are you going to replace your forces? Are you going to bring someone from this world? Are you going to pick someone from this world? Maybe he might even try to bring May as being like, because he sees how skilled of a fighter May is. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to bring you along. You're pretty badass. I'll make you a part of the team. I'll save you from this world, and we'll go on the other worlds together. I don't know. But part of me is wondering, are they potentially being hunted? Are they going from one world to the next, being hunted by something or someone who's destroying this world, these worlds coming after them? Or are they the ones destroying the world? I'm leaning partially to the thought that maybe they're not the one doing all this world destroying, but maybe they're running from it. I don't know. I mean, they are, maybe this is all about trying to get them a new ley line to another, like open a portal to another dimension or something like that. Because it doesn't, like I said, I don't think this is Alien. I think this is multiverse type of stuff. I could be 100% wrong. Like, it's going to be interesting to see, like, the whole conversation of the worlds and stuff like that. So whether that's Alien or Otherwise, we'll have to wait and see. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things go from there. There's also the little side note of the whole Keller and Yo-Yo situation. I thought was kind of interesting because, Mac... Because, May's like, oh, you should go, check on Keller. The fact is, he brought Fox into this, so he might be going through a rough time. But he's like, yeah, but I don't think I'm the one that he's going to go to for comfort. And it's like, oh, he knows about Yo-Yo and Keller. And May even tells her that. It's like, you should probably take a step back with all that. And Yo-Yo's like, wait, what? You literally told me last episode to go forward with it. She's like, yeah, but that's before I saw someone going around killing people with Coulson's face, so... There's that whole complication. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go from there. Obviously, Mac's not letting it interfere with his job too much. He's got too much on his plate for that to really... He can't let that distract him with so much going on. It's like he's got to put his feelings aside about everything. He's got to be professional. He's got to lead this team, lead this group of people and protect the Earth. Do what, S.H.I.E.L.D does best, So... that's definitely going to be interesting. And then on the other side of things, obviously it was kind of what I thought it was. Fitz is trying to pretend to be an alien to kind of fit in because of the whole like, oh yeah, you don't want people to know you're a Terran. Also plus the fact that he's hiding from the people who blew up the ship, which now it seems like that was potentially the Confederacy. Now, why specifically they would have blown up the ship, I don't know. You would assume it has to be someone that knew about it, or maybe it's just because, time has changed because things have worked out differently. So it's just kind of like where in the original timeline, no one ever found the ship. Now it's like someone else did find the ship. There was also part of me that wonders, no, because it was the same ship last season, wasn't it? Like when Fitz woke up, right? Because I'm about to say, not unless this is how the timeline originally worked, but it seemed like no, he stayed asleep undisturbed all that time. It's kind of where things kind of seemed like they were potentially going in that case. So that's why I'm like, I don't know about that. So I'm about to say, not unless this is how things worked out, but obviously, either way, it does seem more like it is just purely like 100% of like, oh yeah, the timeline's changed, so things working out a little differently. It is kind of interesting though, like obviously he's trying to be low key, but it's like, hey, he kind of messes up, and the guy Vera who runs the place, it's like, okay, me and Enoch will help. All you have to do is just like not kill us, and we'll work for free. And it's like, oh yeah, you guys did a fantastic job. But then there's a situation of, well, because you did such a fantastic job, I will, get rid of the rest of the crew. And obviously Fitz is like, oh, I can't let that happen. Because for him, it's like, if he let something like this happen, it's not him just trying to be a hero. It's kind of what he does. I think he kind of isn't giving himself enough credit. But for him, it's like, if I let these people die, then like, how can I meet, Luke Simmons in the eyes afterwards? And, it's like, kind of saying like, this is what I kind of have to do. What about you, Enoch? You can't just sit back and watch this either, can you? And Enoch just looks at him, and he's like, I love Fitz's, like, oh, cool. I love that that's his response. Because for Enoch, it's like, well, I got my focus on one thing, and everyone else is kind of irrelevant because this is about saving the Earth and everything. So you, in that regard, kind of take more precedence over everything. But I did like that, when time came, Fitz isn't, he isn't a fighter, but for him, it's like, hey, I'm trying to give you another option. Like, he was even suggesting, hey, I can train these people. That way you don't have to kill them and everything. But, it's like, he's power tripping and everything. So I was like, it's my way, the highway. You should be just lucky I'm letting you live it all. So you should shut up. But poor bastard ended up getting sucked into space. So him and his people. So luckily Fitz and Enoch were able to save everyone. And it's kind of interesting. There was that whole conversation where Enoch was like, oh yeah, it's kind of good that you figured that there would probably be a violent outcome to this situation. And for him, it was the whole conversation of, what was it exactly that Fitz had said? He was like, there's a part of me that knows how compromised a violent man can be. Now, was that him in reference? I'm assuming the first thing that clicked in my head was like, oh, is he talking about that side of himself that he got to know because of the framework? Which I do love that conversation kind of circling back, because Benson was like, you don't think this could be like a whole LMD situation? I'm like, oh, snap. It's like, oh, let me meet with the creator of that. And it's like, yeah, that's going to be pretty hard. He's dead. He pretty much died when the framework died because he was the last living conscience that was a part of it, because every other conscience was, fake and made up for the framework. But yeah, he's dead. Actually, he's been dead for a while now. So yeah, and don't worry, this obviously has nothing to do with LMDs. I mean, I'd still like them kind of winking and nodding towards that, because it's like, right, because you would make that assumption after having dealt with them in the past. It's like, well, yeah, because I didn't even think about that. It's like, that's the closest thing to a shapeshifter that Dave dealt with, because that was another thing I thought of too, because of the whole Captain Marvel thing. It's like, well, we could be dealing with Skrulls, but I don't know if they would necessarily do that, simply because of the way Skrulls were set up in Captain Marvel. I've said this previously about that not possibly being a case if they were going with the alien thing, because like, Skrulls are the only thing within the MCU that have really been established as kind of shapeshifters. But I didn't even cross my mind and think, all right, there's the whole LMD days. But then, to be fair, like, all that's dealt with and gone. Like, so that's not even something to really think about. But still, it was just kind of interesting. But when the time came for them to kind of land on a planet, like, Fitz decided to change his mind, because it's like the crew would get in trouble. They'd be, put to death and stuff like that, because it seemed like, oh, they like, did a mutiny and kind of took over the ship, so they would get in trouble if they land. And obviously for Fitz, it's like, helping out people. It's like, we'll go to a planet where they could get jobs and, be safe and fine. And it's like, yeah, that's just who Fitz is. And for him, it's like, he wants to get the Simmons, but he has plenty enough time. I mean, he's literally going to freeze himself to go to the future, which is interesting and sad, because just as they're pulling away, Simmons and the others pop up, and she's like, he's here, I know, I can feel it. It's like, oh. And that's something that they've talked about before. Like, let's not forget, that's an element to this too. Simmons and Fitz always felt like they were cursed. That basically it's almost like the universe has constantly tried its best to split them up. Literally going as far as killing Fitz last season. So I think that speaks volumes in itself. So, but it's like they were this close to each other, and now I'm curious, is that how the whole, like, because once again, I looked at the trailer like once, maybe twice, but so a lot of stuff doesn't click in your head, because obviously a lot of it's out of context. Because I'm about to say, I think, well, it's kind of spoilers for anyone that hasn't watched the trailer, so I won't go down that route about where that potentially might go. But nevertheless, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens when they land on a planet, because obviously it's that whole thing of like, yeah, Terrans, probably not that welcomed in outer space. Also, the whole aspect of, like, let's not forget the Confederacy is also still hunting you down, so that's another thing too. Plus, they also got to deal with the issue of Simmons put them in this situation of, we wanted to go home because, yeah, we needed to regroup, build up our resources, and because you did this, you've put our lives in danger, and potentially for nothing, because Fitz isn't even there anymore, and that's going to be a hard reality to sink in. And I think that's probably going, like, we all know, like, Simmons is barely hanging on. This was like her last Hail Mary, and when this doesn't work out, which it won't, because Fitz isn't there, we know he's okay, but she doesn't know that. It's going to break her heart, dude, and that's going to be the most devastating thing about the situation. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.